Welcome back to part 3. We're going to begin with reassembly of both float bowls, primary and secondary assemblies, and the associated metering block that goes with the primary. I like putting everything back in place before I tackle something else, so I don't have too many parts laying around. This way it gets them out of the way, fewer chances of losing things. So let's go ahead and get started with the primary side, and then we are going to finish with the secondary side. So we're going to begin with reassembly of the primary float bowl and or fuel bowl. And first thing that I'm going to put on is I am going to reinstall the accelerator pump. So with that, just grab the gasket here. Now with this, you'll notice that there are two sides to it, and they're very different. The side up is the side with the big knob out front, not that one. You want to make sure that the side that protrudes more with that little circular pad. So make sure that that's there, it fits up right, perfect. So you want to make sure that spring goes in first. Don't forget the spring. There have been times where I've reassembled these and forgot the spring and had to take it apart again. So make sure to put the spring on first, then put your gasket on, then put the housing in place, and already have the screws on there to make it go a little bit quicker. And remember, lever goes to the outside, not facing inside. Very easy to reinstall. Just 4 simple screws. Don't tighten them down too much until you get them all in, because you want to tighten evenly so you don't have any leaks. Okay. Far on, just a little tightening, boom. Okay, there we go. Now the next thing that we want to install is going to be the float assembly. So we make sure that spring is good there. Make sure this is even. This little hanger that's here, the pin, make sure it's even. You don't have it too far on one side or the other, because then it'll fit in properly. Okay, push it into place. Get your 2 screws. Start with the first one. And again, anytime you're assembling these things, don't tighten all the way down. Just tighten until it starts to seat, because you want to tighten these things evenly, not unevenly. Okay, as soon as it starts to seat a little bit, then just a little turn from there. You don't have to do these super tight at all. Okay, looking good. All right, next thing that we're going to put in is going to be the valve and seat. Again, this is really good. Put that in, and then make sure there is a gasket, a very thin paper gasket that is going to be on this side that is going to rest against the body here. So see, there it is. Put that in. And when you put this on, you can actually put it in by hand. There we go. Okay, little tip for you. So as you're screwing it in, turn over your fuel bowl, because we are actually going to be setting the float bowl height, or the float height. So you see how it moves when I turn? Okay, this adjusts the height of the float bowl. So what I look at here is I look at about halfway. You can see the sight plug right inside here, and I try to align the top of my float with midway down that sight plug. That's a pretty good setting. I found that usually is pretty close to being the perfect setting for the float height. All right, let's tighten this down. This is how we lock it in place and keep it from leaking. Hold it with the 5/8, and then just tighten your screw. Boom. There we go. Okay. All right, so that is the assembly of the primary bowl. Next, we're gonna work on the metering block. So doesn't matter what order we do this in. I already have these idle air valve screws, already put those back in, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go ahead and start with putting in the power valve. Make sure you got your gasket on there. Insert the power valve and just tighten it by hand. And then firm it up with your 1-inch wrench. That's good. You don't need to use gorilla strength to tighten it. Make sure everything's working there. Now we're gonna put in our jets. I've already ensured that these are clean. I've cleaned them out with carb cleaner, then blew air through them, blew air through, all the various channels that are in the metering block as well. Made sure that air was blown through the exit for the accelerator pump. Just make sure all your channels are clear. So these are easy to put in. Just finger tight, and then just a little tiny turn with the screwdriver afterwards. Finger tight. Finger tight. And just a little tiny turn. It's not even going to be an eighth of a turn that you get more on these. It's hardly anything. That one wasn't very tight, but see, once it's seated, that's it. All right, this is assembled. Perfect. All right, already have my gasket in place here. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna make sure this lines up, and you have these little pegs that are here, and these pins will help align it properly. They actually lock into place on your carburetor body, so you know that you've got it in the right position. Because when it locks in, it locks in. All right. Now this is the tricky part. This is the only tricky part with the assembly here. So, and this happens a lot. So I want to make sure that. Okay. So you have to line up your accelerator pump lever. So this goes underneath here. So you make sure that that sits underneath that lever. Okay, right here. And then once everything is lined up, just need to wiggle it around a little bit. At least on mine you do. Wiggle it around a little till everything pops into place. First bolt's in. Second bolt's in. Or screw, not really a bolt. Okay, now for these, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but all 4 of these screws are gonna have a little paper gasket on them. Make sure that's in place when you're reassembling it. Don't forget those paper gaskets. And tighten everything up. Okay, we're gonna check the movement. Okay, if you pay attention here, you can see that that little cam and that level, when that throttle moves, it pushes down on that accelerator pump, which pumps an additional squirt of fuel into the body of the carburetor, into the barrel when you're at higher throttle levels, see? So just a little bit of extra there. All right, let's take care of the secondary side. There's the secondary side of the carburetor. So let us rebuild our secondary fuel bowl. So first thing we're gonna put in is we are gonna put in our float and hanger assembly. Very easy to do. Just pop that in place. The 2 screws. again, stop before it really seats so that we can do this evenly. Okay, start in the seat, just a little turn. There we go. Let it seat and then a little turn from there. Okay, make sure it springs back. Working beautifully. Okay, now we're gonna put on the needle and seat. Okay, again, working well. Screw that in. All right, I already have my gasket on here on the underside and on the top side. I'm just gonna put that in place. And like I showed you with the primary, you can adjust the float height. I adjust it to the top of the float being halfway up this, and you can see it from the inside. That looks pretty good. All right, the gasket is on the top already. Let's put the screw in. Okay, now we have to hold that nut in place so that we can tighten it, and then that will seal it and keep it from moving. Okay. All right, secondary flip bowl. Okay, next thing that we're gonna install is gonna be the metering plate. It is clean already. All the channels are perfectly clean. Gaskets have already been replaced, are in place. The top of it has that square cut. Just pop it into place there. And then we're gonna secure it to the body of the carburetor. Don't tighten it too much, just get it in there. Make sure to get this one on, and then I won't have to hold it anymore. It'll be in place. All right, I'll put all the others in. And again, I replaced the original clutch head screws that were originally in here with these Phillip heads. You know, I prefer the Phillips heads, but it really doesn't matter. It's the same exact construction, same size. It's just that when I removed the original ones, they were so seized in place that I had to cut some of them out. And rather than just order a kit with the clutch head screws, I just went down to the hardware store and I got these. These are made of stainless, so they will last the life of the carburetor. And these, do not tighten these down too much at all, just light, very, very light. There we go. That's it. All right, now that the metering plate is in place, all the gaskets are there, I will just put on the secondary bowl. Just pops right into place. There's no need to line anything up with the accelerator pump arm since it doesn't have one. So just make sure that you've got your gaskets on your screws and then pop everything into place. Okay. All right. Everything is reassembled for the primary and secondary side. All right, now that we have finished rebuilding the the primary and the secondary side of the carburetor. The only thing that remains is the choke mechanism, which is this choke mechanism. And then we have the secondary that has a diaphragm inside, and this is what opens up your secondaries based on vacuum that is within the manifold. So essentially with the choke mechanism, we just want to make sure everything's operating properly, which it does. There will be a connection to the interior of the vehicle, comes out of the firewall and connects here. The cable will usually go through a holder here, and it connects directly here. So when you pull on it, this is a pull, it pulls the butterfly closed, and that essentially establishes richer conditions for cold start. It makes it easier to start an engine under those conditions. And then when your vehicle warms up, you push it, and then it opens the butterflies completely. So just want to make sure that's operating properly, which it is. So not a problem there. If there's an issue, these things are so basic. You can just replace your components in there. You can just pop the old one off, put a new one in. But you're going to have to actually remove your choke assembly here in order to remove your secondary and diaphragm, because there is a third screw. Let's see if we can see. So if we look down here, you've got one screw here, you've got another that is in here, but then there is a third one up top, and that is going to be blocked by this. So you do have to remove this in order to access that screw. So this has to come out if you're going to be messing with this at all. Once you do take this out, you remove your screws from here. There is just a little C-clip you pop off, and this whole assembly comes out. The diaphragm, there's a little rubber diaphragm in here. The diaphragm comes with that arm, so all of the inside section of this will get replaced. Those are pretty standard in your carburetor rebuild kits. Not all kits do have them though, so make sure the kit that you order does have the diaphragm for here, otherwise you're going to pay extra for it, and it is something that you almost always have to replace if you're going to go through the trouble of rebuilding your carburetor. So that's it, folks. That's carburetor rebuild in a nutshell. This has been the 4150 style carburetor, which there are a couple variations of it, but like I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, carburetors all function pretty much the same way, and you're going to have some slight design differences, such as position of the fuel inlet lines, whether it has a secondary metering block or a metering plate instead. With the 4160 carburetors, they've got a different shaped float bowl to them, and the fuel feeds on one side rather than fuel going into both float bowls through separate lines. So there's some variations, but essentially carburetors, they all work the same way. So if you can rebuild one of them, you can rebuild any of them. So with that, good luck to you all. If you have any questions, make sure to put those in the comments of my site for the videos, and please like and subscribe. Thanks again, everyone.